And welcome home to Tampa Home Talk right here on Money Talk 1010. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, joined by my favorite sidekicks, Mr. Leo Kane.
With Beryl Engineering and Inspection.
And, of course, Adam Talley.
With Talley Insurance.
And our favorite appraiser ever, Miss Danielle Evans.
With Gateway Appraisal Services.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
So you might remember last week, so we had, I put the cart before the horse because that never happens with me, but we had Bella Vita Home Designs in here, and they were basically talking all about, what it's like to go through and build a home. But what I probably should have done is backed up, and that's what we're going to do this week, right after we talk about the numbers. And we're going to talk about the 3 different types of builds available. Because when you're looking for a new home, there's actually 3 completely different ideas of what a new home is. So we're going to cover that this morning.
There's ones built right. There's ones you're told that build right that collapse in the first year, and then there's ones that you're told build right and fail in the first 5 years.
So you have, that reminds me of, did you ever see that Facebook meme, Danielle, where it says, it's got like all these different houses, and it says how you see your house, how your lender sees your house, how the appraiser sees your house.
Yes.
This moment reminds me of that. Like how the real estate agent thinks about home builds, how the engineer thinks about home builds, and how the insurance guy thinks about home builds. Right?
Yeah.
It's not far out there.
No.
All right. So let's jump into the numbers. We're going to chat about this a little bit this morning, see how we're doing. Our solds are way up. It's because and the inventory is slowly creeping. Nothing major to report this morning. Our new listings are up a little. So we coming in at 578 new listings in the last 7 days.
We're getting better. We're through the January slump. Groundhog's Day happened. Groundhog saw us shadow. We're going to have 6 more weeks of bad real estate market.
Yeah,
now,
it sounds like it.
Now, question for you on these new listings, because I read some post that some realtor made yesterday on some social media platform. If you put a house on the market, let's say it's a decent, it's not dilapidated or anything, it's a normal standard house that somebody would want to live in. How many days from the time it goes on the market do you have 10 offers?
I'm glad you asked that question, Adam, because going back to what we've talked about before numerous times, Danielle, this market is very, very, very different than the last market that was crazy like this, where we had buyers in the market that weren't actually qualified to buy. Mm-hmm. We had lenders that were not qualified to lend. We were thinking, great minds were thinking, I like this way. Look at this, we're on fire. Yeah. Anyway, it was just a completely different market where we have real qualified buyers. They actually qualify under traditional guidelines. They got tighter since COVID, and they have not loosened back up. And they have real cash that they're bringing into the market, whether that's from the sale of the equity or another place out of state or whatever it is. They, even if they're a first-time home buyer, they still have to have cash, especially in this market, because sellers are not paying closing costs still, no matter what. And, well, I can't say that. How often do we see that? It's
I
almost
see it all
never.
the time.
You do? Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're paying it, but not.
I'm in every market. I'm in the smallest of the market to the largest market.
So we're not seeing a lot of that. Builders are.
So if they're paying closing costs, what would that be for? Is it like maybe the house needs a little TLC?
No, it actually can't go towards repairs. They have a lot of other expenses. So if they're getting a mortgage, they're going to have intangible taxes, state tax stamps. They're going to have title insurance. They're going to have all kinds of, lender fees and just other stuff.
You played Monopoly. It's those yellow cards you pick up.
Right. Why would the seller want to put money towards closing costs?
Well, in a normal market, it's to sell their home, right? But we're not seeing that so much in this market. So to answer your question, not only are buyers qualified, but I think they're educated and they're more savvy than they were before. So you had renters that really were never actually qualified buyers, right? Because they didn't even think like a homeowner. I mean, the old adage is true where the way a renter takes care of a home and the way a homeowner takes care of a home is different. There's that pride of ownership, right? Some people will always be renters because of how they care for the home and the yard and that sort of stuff. So
it is a pain in the butt to mow the yard.
But I mean,
every week.
So with that being said,
wait, does the renter mow their own yard or does the owner own?
It depends on the contract.
Depends on the contract.
Yeah.
I have
No. I mean physically doing it. I think the renter would probably be more likely to do it, and the owner would be more likely to hire a lawn service.
Yeah.
Well,
Correct.
Yeah, but
outsource it.
Who actually pays for that or does. It is in the contract.
Yeah.
So back to your question on how many days is it going to be before you hit multiple offers. The truth is, if homes are not priced correctly, even in this market with as red hot as it is, and we'll finish the numbers in a minute, we're not seeing the multiple offers, or they're taking a little bit longer because the market, it slowed a little, not a ton. I mean, the number is still crazy strong.
The price point depends on how fast it's going to go on.
The price point has a lot to
over
do with it.
500,000. We're looking at 30 to 60 days.
Yes.
And that people look at us and they're like, "You're reporting inaccurate information," and I'm like, "Look, it's right here in the data."
No, it's actually, she's right. It's accurate, because when you start moving in that over $500,000 price point, the buyer is a different caliber. It's over the average or the median or the the normal range of an average home in the area. And so with that being said, if the price, every house has a price range, right, Danielle? Even though you guys they make you put a number on it at the bottom of your appraisal, it has a range. Right?
Absolutely.
And depending on the condition of that home, the other comps, if they vary, like in terms of if they have a pool, don't have a pool, have stuff the subject doesn't have, that may adjust your value. And she looks at it a little bit differently than how we look at it. So when we look at it, we're coming in ahead of when she comes in, and we're saying, okay, we're looking at all this data. We're looking at stuff in the neighborhood. We're pulling comps with similar parameters of what an appraiser is going to pull. We have to look at what that range is, right? And then from there, we can dig in a little bit further to find out, which is what appraisers do actually a lot more than we do. We can dig in a little bit further to find out, okay, why did one home sell a little bit more than another? Like, was everything completely updated, renovated, including the major components like the roof, HVAC, electrical, or did one of them have, an older roof and an older electrical system? So all of those things play a part. And so with that being said, we're looking at the range. And so depending on the market determines where we can actually list or price that home in the range. And so right now, even though the market is still great, it still has a range. And if you go above what that true range actually is, like I think some agents just don't know how to pull comps.
Right.
But if you're looking at a true depiction of what comps are, like data an appraiser could actually use, and you stay in that range, we're not going to have a problem selling our home.
Absolutely.
Now, when the market's going the other way, Adam, we have to price in the lower or middle end of that range and reduce quickly in order to sell that home, because when the market's going the other direction, you actually have to get ahead of that, or the seller's going to come out worse. And so that's hard sometimes to convince a seller that, but it's true.
So if you're a listing agent, why wouldn't you, because you see it all the time, right? Or why wouldn't you price it just, on the lower end of the range? Because you're going to get a ton of offers, mostly above that ask, and you'll probably end up on the higher end anyways with probably stronger offers.
You could.
With less
it depends on
contingencies,
what
et
the
cetera.
seller wants. Like if the seller is living there, they may not want mayhem in their house with showings every 15 minutes,
100 cars parked down the street waiting to come in.
It depends on what the seller wants, right? If they've got a lot of really expensive things in their home, they may not want this freaking craziness of just people everywhere and open houses with a line out the door, which, has happened. We've seen that in this market. So it just really depends on what the seller wants. And then the other thing, too, that I'm seeing is where the prices are going way above the list price. We're not seeing a ton of that unless it really is underpriced. So we're typically coming in right where the listing agent priced it, or a little bit above if it's priced correctly.
But not wild, right?
Not wild like it was.
Not like $350 and the winning bid is like $380 or something. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we were seeing crazy stuff.
Believe it or not, we're seeing a lot of stuff that appraisers would call stable, and it's because we look 12 months back, and 7 to 12 months ago and today they're almost identical. And so that's when you start to change from an increasing market to a stable market, and all appraisers are about ready to be pounced for that.
I don't think we're stable yet.
But if you look on our 1004 MCs, with the page in the appraisal, and you take 7 to 12 months ago, and you take the last 3 months, they're identical, and there's a dip in the middle. And it wasn't an increase, it was a decrease. Well, and so when people say appraisers have been calling this an increasing, or calling this a stable market, I can actually argue with the appraisers. I can actually defend the appraisers, because we're seeing it. We're seeing it's more
And
steady.
you have the ebbs and flows, right? Holidays, like a lot of that stuff.
And this is
For me,
development specific,
When I think
neighborhood
about
specific.
stable market, though, Danielle, I think about balance, supply and demand,
Yeah.
like that 3 to 6 month absorption rate, and we haven't had that.
No,
So,
not
all
at
right.
all.
So, real quick to wrap up on the numbers, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the 3 different types of builds you can get. Builds with a D. So the number of new coming in at 578. The number of sold is up from last week. We're coming in at 915 this week, where last week we were at 657. And the number of pending home sales, pretty steady from last week, right at 1,020. And our off-air number to call or text to get this information, if you want a hyper-local information for your particular home or neighborhood, we can get it to you at 813-377-2775.
This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm Adam Talley with Talley Insurance. Leo, you got a tip of the week?
Oh, definitely.
You started talking. I thought you were just rolling right into it. Let's do it.
Well, we were taken by surprise. But
We were.
I know.
Speaking of
We were talking about dogs. We could talk about dogs.
we can talk about dogs, but that's not my tip of the week.
Give out our number one more time because I was kind of rushed.
813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775.
And that's a call or text number.
You can call our text, and I'm also happy to announce, you know how television shows have an off season?
Yes.
Our television shows on YouTube also had an off season,
Yes.
and our season premiere aired last night for the radio show. So these radio shows are back on YouTube. Now you can smash the like and subscribe button.
We've actually had people ask because the podcasts have been delayed getting reposted as well, because we do the show live and then they get reposted on a podcast. And we've had some people call our office and text us and say, hey, are you still doing the show? Because you haven't posted podcasts in a while. It was like a month.
It's an off season. I mean,
Yeah.
most TV shows take a break. Even news TV shows that are serialized, like on the HBO or Netflix or whatever others have those news type shows.
You're
What's
live,
that
you
called?
don't get that.
Hiatus?
Hiatus. No, we're on a seasonal break.
Seasonal break.
And they're back. So our videos are back. So you can smash like and subscribe. You can see us in addition to hear us. And I'm very excited to announce that. But that's not the tip of the week.
What is the tip of the week?
Tip of the week. So we're doing a lot of baby proofing inspections, and I see the same hazard over and over again. I don't know why people do it. They put their cribs right up against an electrical outlet.
Oh.
And they'll baby proof, or they'll think they're baby proofing every electrical outlet in the house with these little choker tabs, as we call them, but they won't do anything with the one next to the crib.
I'm like, oh, let's play with this one.
Baby can immediately reach there and electrocute themselves, especially when they start getting little toys and they start rolling around. It is the most dangerous electrical outlet in your house at that point.
How did you end up migrating to also opening a baby proofing company? A little bit off topic, but just real quick question. Was it some of the hazards that you saw in home inspections, or what led you there?
Well, our company, when we formed, always wanted to move towards aging in place, and getting to aging in place also involves the little young ones. When we published our book with InterNACHI back in 2016, there's a whole chapter dedicated to baby proofing. So
Okay.
the seeds were already there.
Got it.
There's also 2 chapters on aging in place. So
Which is how you
you
prep the
say-
home for
sedentary
elderly.
lifestyle.
yeah, basically aging in place is more along the lines of taking out your bathtub and putting in a walk-in shower.
Got it.
Things of that nature. Putting the handrails in a
Yeah.
way that you can move around the house, or adding a lift so you can get from the first floor to the second floor.
So prepping the home for those different
Yeah.
stages of life.
How many lifts have you put into houses?
Well, 0, because we're not into aging in place yet. We're still in the baby proofing phase. Baby
Okay.
steps.
aha.
So baby steps deals more
Pun
with
intended.
preventing access. So with aging in place, it's granting access, and baby proofing is preventing access. We want to prevent access to rooms. We want to prevent access to stairs. We want to prevent access to electrical outlets by cribs so they can't electrocute themselves. We want to prevent access to drawers so they can't climb up stuff. We want to prevent access through windows or to choking on these cords right here. Like right here, you've tied a knot around this, creating a strangulation hazard. If a baby's in
in
here,
that tiny little hole?
they
I
could
didn't do
strangle.
that.
Babies could strangle themselves right on this little cord
Okay.
cleat.
We'll have to tuck that up there.
So yeah, there's a lot of hidden dangers in
the
houses.
biggest baby in the world if
I
it could
know,
reach that.
right? I think it's pretty high.
So we're worried about Adam now choking himself during
I
that.
am a big baby. Question for you as we're teasing your future ventures. For those listening outside that maybe have parents or something like that, or that are aging, and And whenever they decide that it's their time, it's already too late. So at what point do you suggest that you start looking at some of the things to make their lives easier in their house?
Well, both baby proofing and aging in place, they take the people by surprise. They know they need to do it. They know they need to do it. Life gets in the way.
And then boom, it's there.
And boom, it's there. Like we had a
like
client.
9 months goes by real quick, right?
We had a client. We inspected the home like 4 months ago. And they went back and forth. They wanted to see referrals. We provided. They wanted to see pictures of stuff. We provided. We provide all this stuff. And then we get a frantic email. Baby started crawling. We need this tomorrow. I'm like, well, unfortunately, we have to schedule you. And we're going to schedule you during our next
the baby
install.
started crawling?
But it wasn't until baby started crawling that they were willing to do months of due diligence.
Yeah.
And then baby started crawling, and the whole panic sets in. So with the elderly,
your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part. I'm so sorry.
so it's the reverse with the elderly.
Understand.
It's
It'll
like
be next week.
with the elderly, you think you have time, and then a stroke happens, or a fall happens, and a bone breaks, and you think you have time to prepare for all this, and then it's sudden. So it's the opposite. With baby proofing, you know it's coming. With aging in place, it's really it's an event.
And it could happen quickly.
Yeah, it's a stroke, a heart attack, a fall. Those are the three main causes that will cause you to have to renovate your house into aging in place. Now, the sad part is, with baby proofing, we can inspect today. We can send a 2-man team in a week from now, and you're installed. Aging in place is about renovating your bathroom. It's about reconfiguring a kitchen,
costs money.
ordering a lift for your stairwell. That takes time. That could take 4 to 6 months.
And that's where we come in, because sometimes people want to just move, right, as opposed to doing that.
I mean, I think back to even my own family. It's like grandmother, who's now passed, had a knee surgery, and she was in a two-bedroom, a 2-story townhome where all the living stuff was on the second floor. She basically had to figure out how to live on the first floor. And what she didn't have was a working shower bathroom down there. She had the half bath, but you can't shower in a half bath.
That could be I've actually thought about that. That could be a whole business venture, to where you tweak these small little spaces and install a little shower and make it work. Yeah.
They actually have temporary showers. I've seen them in people's garages for this particular thing. Same situation, and the elderly mom has to come live with the kids.
Yeah.
And can only access the first floor.
And if you're in a house,
people put these showers in the garage.
Yeah,
They're temporary showers that are hooked up through the laundry.
Yeah, if you're in a house, the easiest thing to do would be to renovate part of your garage into a working
shower.
That's the fastest, easiest way to do it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But if you're in a flood zone,
I think that's
and you start completing your garage, then which is usually a couple feet below where your house starts.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of different criteria.
And when you think about building, it's not that much harder or extra for a builder to install a tiny little corner shower when they're building a 2-story dwelling. It's really not that expensive or cost, prohibitive. I just feel like they should.
You just need the space. I have a friend of mine. He lives in VM Ybor, and his children he's got 2. They thought they were infertile, and now they have 2 children. So that's a win for them. But now what they're doing is they want to make a Jack and Jill bathroom for the children, because it's a 1-bathroom house, and now there's 4 of them. So they want to turn their closets into a bathroom. And we were in there talking about minimums, and something simple like, what's the minimum shower size you need for the small little shower? Or how do we put the sink and the toilet as one unit?
Yeah, I've seen those. I was actually looking at that because my sister was in a townhome, and her daughter has actually scoliosis, pretty severe for a young age. And so she were thinking about her having a major surgery and also not being able to get upstairs. And that was one of the things we were looking at, is how do you combine or minimize or reduce
Yeah, I mean,
space?
So we can take something like the size of a bedroom closet and turn that into a full bathroom, but you're dealing with basically a cruise ship style shower, and then you're also probably dealing with a toilet sink combo.
But then if you get rid of the closet, does it not? Then it's not a room anymore when you go to sell it, right?
I got a better question. I got a better question for our appraiser, because I think that it's weird to see.
Right?
I think it's weird to see the sink on top of the toilet. It's probably more common in Europe, but I think it's strange here. So with that being said,
we see it in garages all the time.
Well, with that being said, with the kitchen being downstairs, I'm curious from an appraiser's perspective, if someone were to modify the home and take a half bath and there's a toilet and a shower, but they remove the sink and say you got to go to the kitchen to wash your hands.
It would still be considered a half bathroom,
Is that
wouldn't be considered
But I mean,
a full.
or would you tag that as a functional obsolescence?
No.
Okay.
I see people that take the half bathroom and they make the sink a beauty salon sink. And I've seen, because people work from home now, and so I've seen some creative
You
stuff
see
in those
crazy
half
stuff.
bathrooms. But the one thing is, you don't have to have a closet to be a bedroom. And the other thing is that
Well,
on the
we
first
count
floor,
on you have to have a window and a closet, or we don't
it's
count
not.
as a
You
bedroom.
really don't need that. I mean, look, just go into Starkey Ranch and look at all of these flex dens. They're being sold as 3-bedroom houses, and they're 2 bedrooms.
See, the
we
Florida-
all know
the
it.
Florida
They'd be
builder-
flagged in MLS.
The
Right.
Florida
Yeah.
Building Code actually works this into it. From an engineering standpoint, the Florida Building Code says that we're going to count the amount of rooms that could possibly be used as sleeping rooms, and then we're going to subtract 1, and that's the number of bedrooms you have.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That does make sense. And another thing is that if you have a half bathroom on the first floor with a den, you can't make that den a bedroom because there's no shower on the first floor. So that's functional obsolescence. You would have to go upstairs to take a shower. You'd be in a towel
Yeah.
running through the house. That makes that's the design flaw. We see a lot of people try to put make a den a bedroom. If there's no bathroom on that floor, full bathroom can't be a
I got a
bedroom.
question. So my house has a den
Yep.
and also has a bedroom on the first floor, but it's only got a half bath. Are you saying both of those rooms are not bedrooms?
Pretty much. Unless your house is 100 years old.
It is
It is.
100.
Then you're out of that. Then it's all myth. And your house doesn't
You
need
flew under the
closets at
radar
all.
again.
You do not need closets at all in that
All right.
house.
So when we come
I
back,
don't good because my wife took them all.
we're gonna talk about
Oh.
the 3 types of builds that you can do. So spec, track, and fully custom.
And 100-year-old house.
It's been a great first half. I like this. So we're going to sprinkle some of this stuff in, and we're going to continue with our theme. So you want to build a home. Now what? And we're going to talk about why some people end up not going with a fully custom build. I'm going to give you some pros and cons of each. And if you'd like to get some information or have a consultation with us for some more info, you're looking at doing that multi-gen living thing, 813-377-2775.
Welcome home. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk at 813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775. And make sure you visit us. Our new season just kicked off on the YouTubes. So
Season 8.
In the podcast.
Yeah, visit us. This is season 8. How'd you know?
Good. I've been here long
Visit
enough.
us on the YouTubes. Our new season is kicked off. We just had our pilot episode last night for the new season. Let us know what you think. And speaking of letting us know what you think, this is the Adam tip of the week.
That's right.
So we're talking about doing renovations and all this other stuff, and my tip to people is always make sure that the contractor that you use is licensed and insured. Okay.
Talk about what that means from an insurance
From
perspective.
an
if they're
insurance
not.
perspective, you as a homeowner, if somebody's in there doing a bunch of work on your house and they cause damage to your house, that there's a good chance it's not going to be covered under your homeowner's policy. So you want to make sure that the contractor is insured, and you can just ask for a certificate. You don't need to be listed as an additional insured. That it's not really going to apply. It'll still cover you, but you definitely want to make sure you have a certificate of insurance.
And it's current.
And it's
expired.
Exactly. I probably type up about 100 a quarter for Leo. So it's
No, you can solve that putting them all on the same expiration date.
I could theoretically, but it'd all have to be lined up with your workers' comp because you can't change that.
Yes.
Anyways, that's a different tip for a different week. But that being said, just make sure they're licensed, make sure they're insured. Also, workers' comp, that kind of stuff, because you don't want somebody getting hurt on your property and then comes
Yeah.
back on you.
Yeah, that could get crazy.
Typically, and this is just good for life in general, typically you get what you pay for. So if you're trying to go cheap, find the cheapest person out there, you're probably going to get the cheapest work done, and that's not going to last very long.
Yeah, we literally have to go behind some of that stuff sometimes with those homeowner fixes and figure out how we're going to make it better before we go on the
So I
market.
have a question for you. It's relevant to an inspection I had earlier this week. I was at a condominium association.
Okay.
And they hire an unlicensed, uninsured handyman to do repairs. And he does stuff on the roof.
Ooh.
What would happen if he fell?
Oh, that's a good question.
If he fell
If he fell.
and they hired him,
They hired him. They know he doesn't have insurance or a license.
does the condominium, is it big enough that they have their own workers' comp for their employees?
They don't have employees.
Then the condominium would probably be sued if he fell.
Okay.
Which means all of your HOAs
assessed.
and your
You'd be
special
assessed.
assessments are going to be
Wait,
going
would
up.
that fall under their general liability, or would the condo association itself be sued and not have anything to fall back on?
Maybe all of it.
It'd probably go under general liability, but the condo association has general
Can the
liability.
board of
Yeah, well, yeah,
directors
they
be
have to.
sued?
They have
People
to. Would what?
The ones that order the work, can they personally be sued?
They could. I mean, it's no different than what happened over in Seaside, where you have these people that were on the board that knew what was coming and didn't do anything about it. They're negligent by, by ignoring it. But, generally speaking, when it comes to workers' comp, so let's say you have a contractor, right? And the contractor, any construction field in workers' comp, as long as you have one employee, you have to have workers' comp, right? And if you hire subs and they don't have workers' comp, it comes back onto your workers' comp. So, that's kind of how it goes, and there's a lot of penalties for that. So if you're hiring a sub or anything else like that, make sure that they get their own workers' comp, or make sure that your workers' comp is accounting for it, because you don't want that to happen, right? Accidents happen on construction sites frequently.
More than
I can't even hang a picture without getting a little chip on my nail. So, all right, it's anything could happen.
So let's roll through the 3 different types of builds available, because we have a lot of ground to cover. All right. So spec homes, tract homes, and fully custom homes. So in a nutshell, spec home is typically single family homes that are built in a development with no particular buyer in mind. So the developer comes in, they develop the land, they know they're going to put 100 houses or whatever it is, and they've already got an idea what floor plans they're going to build. They're just got to look for the buyer at the end. That's
they build, they start the build before they have the buyer.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And they will start the build oftentimes without having a buyer in mind.
Now, does it have to be in a development, or could it be, Leo and I have an acre of land somewhere and we want to put a couple houses on it?
You could.
Spring Hill is notorious for it.
Would that still be considered a spec home?
If you start building construction and you finance the construction and you don't have a buyer in mind, and you as the developer, builder, owner are financing the construction, it's a spec home.
Okay.
Because you already have the plans, you know what you're going to build to specs, and you're just waiting for the buyer to come in.
But then
that's where the term spec home
comes in. The Kane Tally construction crews starting soon.
I get confused on the next one, though, once you describe it, because I'll argue that a lot of what's in the second one is also the first one.
It could be. Yeah, they look very similar. So we're going to talk about tract homes.
A spec home is more like inventory. It's more like an inventory
spec is
home.
more like we're going to start it whether we have our buyer or not. That's a lot of your big.
And they're not going to let the
builders.
buyer change anything about it.
Well, so that's the thing. Like they'll
let them finish some flooring.
Actually,
in
the past market they would,
but not floor plans, right?
No, not floor plans. Well, some of them will let, and that kind of falls a little bit more into tract. We'll let them move some stuff. Typically, the specs, if it's early enough, they might be able to pick like paint or flooring.
Like that's what color only.
Some of the big builders are not allowing any changes whatsoever because it slows them down. So they just
got
stick
the cheapest paint imaginable.
And up in Spring Hill,
and if they change it,
really popular.
And somebody mixes up the house and it gets painted the wrong house, it just ends up costing builders more money. So a lot of the builders right now are just rolling with it because they know the buyer demand is going to be there.
The wrong house.
Someone's going to buy it.
So this is an interesting side story. I had a spec home condominium inspection earlier this week. Condominium was built in the early 90s. And they built all 3 buildings back to back to back. They built the first one correctly because it was the model. And then they cut every corner imaginable by the time they got to the 3rd building. Straight down to the fact where I'm in this woman's shower, and the shower had collapsed and the framing's all gone. And I put my hand in front of the framing and I'm like, there's vinyl siding on the outside. And I'm like, where's the wall sheathing?
Oh my gosh.
There was no wall sheathing. Oof. So every time this poor lady took a shower and had all those steamies going in the bathroom, the tile was flexing.
That's crazy.
And the water just got in the wall.
So no wall sheathing means essentially there's no exterior wall. That's what that means.
There's nothing. So it's just vinyl, the wood
framing
to frame it, and then tile
for the shower.
Not even like sheetrock or anything.
Well, there was a sheetrock to put the tile up against.
Okay,
but that was all.
But
there has to be an exterior wall. There has to be wrap.
So basically, paper mache condo.
So that's the danger of spec homes. When your home is being built with no buyer in mind, we're going to build your entire subdivision at once. Every corner cut imaginable could be.
How did that even pass like
the
building inspection?
There's a lot of.
This one.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff actually on our list to talk about with that. So let's roll through this real quick because there's a lot you got to chime in on still. So tract homes, this is where a developer buys a plot of land, they divide that land into individual lots, and then they construct a home to specific architectural options planned for that community. So tract homes could include single family homes, condos, or townhomes.
So with tract homes, then basically we see this where a home on a random lot starts getting built. Four lots down, another random home gets built. They're not, because they're waiting for a buyer of that lot, and the buyer's like, I want Model C.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So they have models already in mind. They'll let you modify or change some stuff a little.
Yeah.
So think about that as like semi-custom homes is a good way to put it. And then fully custom home is where you picked out your own piece of land. You're going to hire a builder to build exactly the way you want it. And it's not like any other home, more than likely. So that's the difference between fully custom compared to tract or legitimately
fully
a spec
custom
home.
is also the plans were bought from an architect. They're not from like these. You can still get MI to come and custom build you a house on your own land. They'll come do it if you really ask them to.
Right.
And those, in my personal opinion, are not considered custom.
So
the floor plan, the blueprints need to be ordered from an architect, so not from a developer.
Let's talk about some of the pros and cons of each, right? So when we talk about some of the pros and cons of a spec home, spec homes are a little more cookie cutter, so the options may be very, very limited if you can change anything at all. The builders may not allow customization or very few options, as we just spoke about. The house will be the same as other homes right there in your neighborhood.
A great example of a spec home is the old Cal Atlantic homes.
Yes.
And I have to say, they were one of the best of their time.
They were,
before they
Till things changed.
Till things changed, yeah. But they're a true spec home. You could not change a thing about those floor plans.
So one of the other cons is the builders may try to entice you to use their preferred partners, and the experience might not be exactly what you hope for. Because if you're using their title company and their lender, because you're paying closing costs, maybe you're maybe a little bit more of a number. I guess is a good way to say it.
What's even scarier is using their insurance agent. So that
happens too. Yeah.
So I don't want to list any brand names, but one of the largest builders in America has their own insurance agency.
Right.
And I'll get people like, oh, I already got a quote from blah, 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 blah. And
Builder.
it's, and it's $500. Why is yours $800 with the same company? I'm like, well, why don't you send that to me? And it has the bare minimum on personal property. It doesn't have any replacement cost. It has a really high deductible. It's like, you're paying $500 for a useless piece of paper at this point.
So I got a question. I'm building an apartment building using cheap supplies, and I'm calling it an apartment building to get it through permitting, but then the last second I turn it into condominiums, which happens all the time. Is that considered a spec or a tract?
Condo conversion.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not considered either of these.
Nothing.
And then you go to your property in Belize, so you don't have to worry about the...
It's a form of ownership at that point. It's a whole totally different form of ownership.
All right, some of the other cons with a spec build are the lot sizes are often significantly smaller. So we'll talk about postage stamp size lots. And, Leo, you're going to love this one. There's no control over the subs, and poor workmanship often gets missed, right?
Oh, yeah, because
so that's some of the cons.
Yeah, basically we're building this whole subdivision. You're praying that the on-site engineer is walking around and the on-site supervisor is walking around, and sometimes neither of that happens.
Right. And then the pros for a spec home are the homes are uniform in terms of colors and features, right?
I've seen great value returns on the first buyers into these spec home developments. You want to make some money?
Yeah.
That's where you start.
It's actually in my list here somewhere in my outline. But yeah, so
for keeping as a rental later too.
But everything's uniform. So what I mean by that is, the colors and the colors that go together
in very stable markets within that development.
Right.
The values aren't going to fluctuate.
They're
all going to be consistent unless there's a pool or not a pool or a 3-car garage versus 2-car garage.
So you must love these developments.
Absolutely.
These
are called
easy
cookie
to appraise.
cutters.
Yeah. They're easy for the appraiser to appraise because there's a lot of comps in there. So in terms of not, having the color schemes that match, not having a pink house next to a purple house, like those are all some of the pros.
So these spec developments are going to have they're going to have an HOA A commanding
Typically.
HOA, a
Typically.
gated community.
Yep.
a
Some will
garden.
only have optional.
Now-
not all of them have a full HOA. Some will
Yeah.
just have a limited.
Or limited. It depends on how it's written and when the builder turns it over and all that sort of stuff. And communities can actually abolish their HOAs. I don't recommend it. I have seen that.
Once every
It will-
20 years.
It will drop the values significantly. I have seen that. And you can tell right away. That actually happened to my dad in a neighborhood he was living. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh.
We see it a
It
lot
looks so
out in
crazy in
Rockridge
here.
area.
Well, and what's the
Polk
difference
County.
when we come back? Can you talk about the difference between an HOA and a deed restricted, or are those the same?
Not really. They're different.
They're different.
Yeah.
So we got a lot on this pro list still.
I
And
guess
I
we're
know
just leading
Leo,
to next week.
Leo, you're out next week, so we're definitely gonna have to continue this conversation
But we
next
have
week.
a Danielle tip of the segment.
I know we do. We'll be back. Stick around. This is Tampa Home Talk. And welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk, and we are back here with Danielle Evans for our appraiser tip of the
I
week.
just have to laugh internally. With the four of us together, you have a show outline. We don't need
3
a
pages,
Four pages.
front and back.
3 pages front back show outline that we have barely scratched the front page of.
We're actually going to continue this next week because there is a lot of meat on this, and as we progress on our shows this year, we're going to break into a lot of these different trades that you're going to need to build a home. The National Association.
Call it a season. If we break into the season.
Season 8.
Season
Yeah,
8.
National Association of Builders. I think it's more than 8 seasons, but maybe this is 9.
National
Maybe that.
Association.
National Association
NAB.
of Builders, NAB, basically says that on average we'll have at least 22 trades involved in every building project. Can't imagine it's that low, but that's what the National Association of Builders report. So we're going to talk to a lot of those trades in the coming weeks ahead and sprinkle that with some fun going on in Tampa.
And just to put a little light on that, you think like, okay, I'm putting stucco up on my wall. You've got the window person, you've got the framer, you've got the people doing the stucco accessories, then you've got the people that are putting the cement on the wall, the people giving the cement. That's 5 trades right there.
And
Yeah,
that
there's quite
doesn't
a
even
few.
include the painter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, painters
Yeah.
on the list.
6, that's
Absolutely.
7.
So, Danielle, what's your tip of the week, especially talking about what we're talking about? You got to have one, I'm sure.
My real tip of the week is remember that appraisers, we leave the desk while your kids are in school. So we're not coming out to inspect your house before the sun comes up or after the sun goes down. Just the same as we're not coming out to inspect on the weekends unless we have a really, really valid reason because we need to be at the desk. When the traffic is at the thickest, we are the most productive behind a desk. So we run inspections between 10 and 2 every day, and we have a lot of customers that want us there at 5, and it's not possible. We have to have the sun up, and we have to have the traffic at a minimum. We have to take pictures of comps, and we cannot have kids walking home from school. We can't be taking pictures of the front yards with kids.
Can't have any people or pets in your
and
photos.
so there's more that goes into our inspection time than them just thinking it's convenient for us.
Yeah.
Find
true.
somebody to let us in. We don't care who lets us in, just let us in. Somebody let us in.
And
Can
you don't
you
need
do
much
it when it
time.
rains?
If it rains, I still go. I'm fully mobile. We throw plastic on everything and go. But if it's torrential, downward, sideways, we do reschedule.
Yeah, our friends in the Northeast, I'm sure, are scheduling a lot of stuff. with the snow
Anybody
they're
that
getting.
has an inspection time and we know they're taking time off of work, we will go there with an umbrella and figure it out. And we
Yeah.
will wait for that rain to stop to take the pictures that we need to of the exterior.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And
to
we'll
me.
make it as convenient as possible for the homeowners.
All right, so let's continue on with some of the pros of building a spec home. So we talked about how the homes are uniform in color, similar features.
The only
pretty
pro,
stable for values.
The only pro of a spec home is if you get in the subdivision first.
It's a great moneymaker. I've never seen them fail. I've really never. And they're great investment properties for the future as well. They're, because like you said, their tenant doesn't always have the best upkeep, and these spec homes, they're not a lot to rehab.
So how many times do you
So
see?
this is look, it was in one of my tips. I said if you buy pre-construction in a community before there's a model, you're typically buying at a substantial discount because you're buying when there's dirt.
So how many times do you see it where someone comes into spec home subdivision, buys pre-build, and then turns around and
Never
sells
moves
it?
in.
Never moves in.
Never
just
moves
sells it.
in. The first three buyers typically never move into those homes. Those are investors, and they're sold.
They already know that tip.
They're sold and look like that.
Well,
they're going to be owner occupied.
You see that on a lot of those condos too, like especially the new high rises going in downtown Tampa and St. Pete. It's like the people that bought put the deposit down before they even started construction. They've already sold their unit for, $500,000 more than what they put down.
Yeah, that's like the condos out in Largo, and they started at $200,000, and they kept just adding on buildings and buildings and buildings. Those same exact condos are now up to $600,000, and it hasn't even been 3 years. Nice. So anybody that came in for the first couple of buildings, they're just cashing in. And then the 3 buildings that were there from 10, 12 years ago, those are the ones that are really profiting because they only paid a quarter of what the people are paying today.
Yeah, it's there's definitely a lot of that. So I forgot where we're at.
Now we're at Spec Homes.
I know. I was like 4 tips down.
You flipped the first page.
I know, but I didn't finish.
And then you highlighted something over here.
We skipped over 5 of the pros because we went straight to get the value.
Only pro is if you get in early. That's the only pro.
Get in early, get out early.
Get in out early.
I just gave you 2.
Another real pro is that they're uniform. They're all uniform.
Was the first
is that a pro? That's communism.
But they're kind of built. You'll notice in these spec homes, so carpet is not standard. They're more on solid surfaces.
Yeah, they're moving that way.
And more on the line of granite instead of floor mica. So they are almost on a better.
Well, they've moved up with the times.
They have. And so back in the day, spec homes, I can completely understand that the material might be less, but I think in today's standards, it's pretty. I think it's better.
Called builder's grade for a reason.
Well, the other thing too is you don't have to stress about a lot of choices and options. For some people just do not like that. It stresses them out. Literally, they get paralysis analysis. So basically, if you like it, you buy it. If you don't, you move on.
And it's no haggle. It's more like if going to a Kia dealership versus a Toyota. You can't haggle at Kia, just like at a spec home. The price is the price, and there's no options to make that price higher.
Well, in this market, sometimes that shifts.
So the buyer, the buyer making the offer is the only thing changing the price.
So one of the other, I'm gonna challenge you on my pro list here, Leo. So the other thing is the communities are already fully developed and planned out, so the infrastructure has already been decided, and the communities are more likely to have sidewalks, public utilities, and all the other shared cost amenities, right? Versus putting in $100,000 pool, you have a shared cost amenity with an HOA to basically have utilization of the pool.
Well, you can still have that with a spec home subdivision. It's shared cost. That's the question
HOA,
Adam asked.
So to
about
answer
deed
your
restricted
question,
and HOAs.
I guess since we're talking about that, the difference between deed restrictions and with an HOA. So HOA means there's a homeowner association, and basically they typically are going to say what the rules are. A lot of times they
get those little HOA Nazis putting sticky notes on your
and
cars.
Stuff. They're going to basically, your homeowner association is going to enforce the deed restrictions. And I think that's where the lines get blurred, because sometimes, like in these older communities, especially in Brandon, which is where you grew up.
That's what I was asking, because we were.
So they will develop, the community builder will come in, they'll develop the neighborhoods, and then essentially they develop them with deed restrictions, but there's no amenities or anything like that, so they don't charge any fees. It's just the restrictions are there.
And it's just like you'd have to call the county to enforce it, basically, if a deed was
kind of, or hire an attorney and eventually build up an HOA so that you could enforce that. I mean, the homeowner association, typically those fees help enforce the deed restrictions or pay for amenities.
The community where I grew up, everything was custom. Was done, so like every home, none of the homes look the same, and they're all.
We didn't even talk about the pros and cons of custom homes.
I know.
813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775.
So that's going to be next week with Adam. So Leo, you're going to have to listen to that one on a podcast.
I might bring my friend Chris, who's building a custom home, and he can talk all about the cons.
Stick around, Tampa Home Talk. Welcome home.
Love where you live.